Task Force Admiral has been on my radar for a very long time. I covered it back in May of 2022 when I showcased it and talked about the idea of the game in detail. Today, almost 3 years later, I figured we could take another look at it, especially as a demo for Task Force Admiral, or TFA, as well as a Kickstarter are both set to go live apparently in the coming weeks. If you've been waiting for years to finally get your hands on TFA like myself, let me know down in the comments. Now let's go over the basics of Task Force Admiral to help give you an idea if you are new to it, or if you're already familiar, then please feel free to skip ahead. TFA's full legal name, so to say, is Task Force Admiral Volume 1 American Carrier Battles. In the initial release, the game will focus, as the title implies, on the American side of things, more specifically during the year of 1942. In TFA, you command a US carrier group, deciding when and where to strike against the Japanese Imperial Navy. It aims to have over 90 ship classes, 40 aircraft types, and 30 plus missions with historical or fictional type scenarios, as well as a quick scenario generator. While you can technically command, view, and play the whole battle from the flag plot on board the flagship, TFA lets you also see the battle from the perspective of attacking dive bombers, defending patrol fighters, the deck of a carrier, and basically everything in between. Like Silent Hunter or U-Boat, you can customize the realism setting, making TFA feel more like a simulator on the one hand, or perhaps more arcadey like the Battle Station series on the other. From battle replays, a scenario editor, accurate to real-life camouflages and markings to advanced ballistics, damage models, and genuinely some fantastic sounds, and I'll give you an example here in a second, it's definitely looking to be a very nice addition to the wargame slash simulations games Steam library. Now, while the Japanese are in-game, they are not playable at the moment. Whether they will be playable down the line via a free update, or if there will ever be a TFA Volume 2, or even 3 or beyond, is not 100% confirmed as far as I know right now. The developers claim that TFA will be one of the most detailed and authentic World War II naval games ever made. I do feel there's quite a bit more to say, but I don't want to get lost in the sauce. Really, the gameplay speaks for itself, hopefully, in the background. Now let me show you, or let you listen to, what I meant by the audio being fantastic. The gunfire, the sirens warning of a torpedo impact, to the voice over the loudspeakers, they all feel very immersive.
Attention. All hands. Air attack underway. Man all torpedo defense stations. Control. Con. Commence firing. Enemy aircraft on a torpedo run from astern. Captain to all hands. Hold on to something. We're commencing evasive action. Engines. All in its flank. All ahead flank. Aye, aye, sir. Torpedo aircraft on attack run. To starboard, heading for us.
Now you have an idea of what TFA is aiming to be and accomplish. Let's talk about what you should expect from the demo when it's going to be coming out here very soon. Per a post by the developers in early December of 2024, the demo will showcase a few different features, allowing you to decide whether or not the full game will, in their own words, be worthy of your time, attention, and hard-earned money. One historical scenario focusing on the last day of the Battle of the Coral Sea in May 1942 will be the setting for the demo. The US carriers Yorktown and Lexington are part of Task Force 17, and they engage the Japanese carriers Shokaku and Zukaku of Carrier Division 5. Now, historically, the USS Lexington was lost, but perhaps you can try to rewrite history and instead deal a heavy blow to the Japanese in the demo. Besides the historical scenario, you can also play around with the so-called Carrier Engagement Generator, allowing you to create your own battle set within a 24-hour window. Inside the demo, the developers are specifically eager to show off both the first and third-person controls for fighters, fighters, which should make for some interesting dogfighting. This, however, is just an early version of it. We'll talk more about this feature in the Kickstarter section of the video. Unless plans change, the demo will only be available as long as the Kickstarter is up. Now that we've covered what will be in the demo, what about the Kickstarter, or even why is there a Kickstarter in the first place? Developers say that they're not doing this because they've run out of ways to finance the game. This is, however, a way for them, they say, to create an experience that they want to bring back, owning big physical editions of games. And according to them, the Kickstarter won't make the game come out faster or slower, it should allow the game to be made bigger. Before we talk about some of the stretch goals of the campaign, let's first talk a little bit about what's actually inside. There are 9 tiers planned for the Kickstarter, with rewards or content showcased here in this chart. From simply supporting the game or developers as a donator, all the way to what they call an Ultra VIP, which has tons of goodies, both digital and physical, as rewards. Keep in mind, this chart is more of a preview. If you plan on supporting TFA on Kickstarter when it goes live, make sure to double check what your tier will actually come with in terms of content. Now, I've linked it down in the description below. The Kickstarter has not been officially launched yet, but the page exists for you to take a look at. Do any of these tiers jump right out at you, or would you rather wait and see how the game develops? Let me know down in the comments. I do want to note that the deluxe editions will be given access to TFA's private beta, allowing you to play and test the game in the lead up to the full release. Now, of course, the early access or private beta might be interesting for people who are completely blown away by the demo and just can't get enough of playing the game. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of this. The developers will have to balance working on and finalizing the actual game, while any new builds they push to the private beta will also require their time and attention if bugs or other issues pop up. I believe this is actually a very big reason for Broken Arrow, a very much looked forward to game, to focus really on releasing the game first when they feel it is 100% ready and not having to deal with these 2 development cycles. However, if the TFA devs feel they can do it both, all power to them. The physical editions are again meant to be a throwback to that big box idea, the editions of the good old days with posters, artwork, and more. This might be something cool for the die-hard collectors out there. The developers do mention that these physical editions would only be possible again by launching a Kickstarter, which is their main reason for doing so. Now, about the stretch goals, which are 7 items the developers have put forward as things they would like to add to the game, which they will after certain levels of money are pledged during the Kickstarter. Number 1, the ships of TFA are currently completely devoid of crew and personnel. While they will only be static, I do like the idea of having some life on board. I specifically like the landing craft. It just makes a big difference seeing them filled with even static soldiers versus being completely empty. Number 2, the soundtrack for TFA would be done by an orchestra. The developers say would be in the same style as games like Silent Hunter or War Thunder. Now, personally, I play with music very low or even completely off, usually due to YouTube reasons, but I suppose this might add some flair for those who care. Number 3, while TFA is initially set in 1942, if this 3rd goal is reached, TFA will expand to include 1943. Specifically mentioned here are Essex-class carriers, Iowa battleships, A6M50s, as well as the Solomon's campaign, Bougainville, and Rabaul. I do wonder how this goal being reached wouldn't slow down development of the game, unless this is already mostly in production already, or if it will be added to the game after the release as an update. The demo for number 4 should showcase an early or basic version of the dogfighting mechanics. If this goal is hit, however, the developers want to focus on having fighters be directly controllable as an actual feature, and not, as they say, it is just a quote crude experiment. Number 5, I really like a lot. If this one is reached, the AA mounts on ships will be directly controllable, giving control to players in what I can assume will be a very cinematic experience as dozens of enemy dive and torpedo bombers approach your fleet or ship. The 6th goal kind of builds on the 1st goal. When this one is hit, the crew on the ships will actually be animated instead of static, and furthermore, the flag plot view will have crewmen walking and standing around. Think kind of like Silent Hunter or U-Boat, just making the game world feel that little bit more alive. Now finally, if the 7th goal is reached, ships will actually be able to be directly controlled. This is a very cool sounding final goal, but I'm also sure it's also the most difficult one in terms of development. While the success of the Kickstarter will of course have to be seen, I do like some of the goals that the developers have set for themselves and the audience. But I again am not 100% sure how some of these will not slow down development. For example, adding 1943 as a war year. Perhaps the developers can give a little bit more details on that when this Kickstarter goes live. With that said, we've reached the end of this video on tasks task Force Admiral. Years in the making, we can finally check it out soon via the demo, something I am very excited to do, and I do plan to showcase my experience in some videos whenever the demo goes live. Now, will you be checking out TFA's demo, or do you have your eyes on one of the Kickstarter tiers already? Is there a specific stretch goal you really hope that the developers reach? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next one.